We have to have that conversation for it to take place, which can add some complexity to it. But really, at the end of the day, that we're all here to enable our organization's mission, and sustainability can be a great tool within that.
Welcome to Smart Energy Voices, an SED podcast, featuring conversations with leaders of the energy transition, hosted by Smart Energy Decisions' own Debra Chanil. In each episode of Smart Energy Voices, Debra digs deep with industry movers and shakers to reveal insights you can learn from in their stories, personalities, and visions for the future. All right, let's dive in.
Hi, everyone. I'm Debra Chanil from Smart Energy Decisions, and I want to welcome you back to Smart Energy Voices. If you've been enjoying the podcast, please take a minute to share it with a coworker or someone that you know who will benefit from this content. And someone else I want to welcome back today is Becky Wacker. She's Director of Energy Services Sales for Trane Commercial Americas, and she leads the acquisition and implementation of complex facility programs and projects for Trane. And she's also had 15 years of experience in helping customers to leverage their buildings to meet their organizational goals. You might remember Becky joined us back on episode 88, where she dug into the challenges and opportunities that commercial building operators face today, especially in light of decarbonization and the value of a holistic approach to decarbonizing your building infrastructure. And today we want to continue that conversation by seizing the day, decarbonization as an organizational opportunity. And, what we're finding is it's really easy to get bogged down into the have-tos of decarbonization, in terms of changing regulations and shifting customer or consumer demands. But the reality is that every decarbonization process, in addition to challenges, also presents opportunities. And it's not only about saving costs and improving efficiency, but it's also about building your organizational value and increasing employee retention and boosting your brand. So what we want to do on the podcast today is to give you a framework to sort through some of that complexity and see the big picture of decarbonization so that you can perceive and prioritize your opportunities to help you think about how to plan, for that future-ready next generation business. So all sounds easy, right, Becky?
Absolutely, Debra.
Welcome back. I'm really happy to have you here with us today.
I'm so pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. And I want you to start by sharing a little bit about your perspective on how organizations are really being pushed in terms of decarbonizing their facilities and operations.
Yeah, I think the key word in there, Debra, is pushed, right? There's certainly a lot of pulls and we're going to talk about that as we go here, but let's set the stage for what's pushing our customers towards decarbonization. I'm going to talk about three. We could go on and on and on, but let's focus on the top three that we see. The first one is changing regulations. So we're seeing things like building energy codes, building performance standards, and the initiation of benchmarking, which is typically just a precursor to more building performance standards or other standards. So when you put these things together, what it really means is buildings and business owners are being required to think about how they operate differently and also make decisions about building improvements and the future of their facilities with a different lens. Typically in the past, what we've seen is a lot of building performance standards and building codes focus on a building being built today. So if you build this building today or going forward, it needs to hit the standard. Well, what we're seeing now is we're looking at our existing buildings and applying standards to those as well. And that makes a big difference because that building is already built. The cookies are already baked, if you will. And so now we're needing to look at how to make those modifications. And that's a big push from a regulation standpoint. The other piece that we're seeing is market and consumer demands. There's all kinds of studies out there, Debra, and we could probably list a whole bunch of them. But, two common ones that we see are the 2022 study by Nielsen IQ that reports 78% of U.S. consumers claim a sustainable lifestyle is important to them, and 30% are likely to purchase goods with a sustainable credential. In addition, another study by Sustainable Brands reports 96% of U.S. consumers intend to behave in a way that protects the planet, with 36% reporting that they always do. And, so these are really focused on consumers, right? Those that are buying goods directly, but this is also impacting the B2B business environment. So up and down the supply chain, these same questions are being asked, being somewhat driven by the consumer at the end, but also within the procurement offices, those that are leading within supply chain saying, I need to do this and I need to know that you believe in the same thing that we believe in before we build that supply chain relationship or purchasing agreement. So as an example, Deborah, I don't know about you, but I've never personally purchased steel from a steel manufacturer. And I don't know anybody else who has, frankly, although that might be really interesting to go do. We are seeing folks like steel manufacturers get pressure around their sustainability initiatives. And why is that? It's because the manufacturers who are using that steel are getting pushed around sustainability initiatives and being pushed by the consumers that are buying and so on down the chain. So even those who may not have been thinking about their brand awareness and putting commercials on TV or the radio that you see are now needing to wrestle with this impact and tackle sustainability and be able to communicate what it means to their organization. And then the third one is resilience needs and future proofing. Climate risk also poses a business risk. So there's a broader imperative for all of us to lower our carbon footprint. And as we think about the impact to our buildings as they become higher and higher demand loads on our grid, as well as the importance of what our different facilities are accomplishing, whether it's healthcare or even a factory, right? If the power goes down for a factory, this is a major challenge in terms of keeping the line moving, and it takes a lot to get it back up and going. And so we're starting to look at things like how do we consistently ensure that power is available? And so there's things like in an electrified future, shifting to energy storage, using cleaner power generation or waste heat or byproducts to produce the power that helps us not only build in the redundancy that they may need, but also potentially look at lowering emissions overall.
Okay, so the imperative to decarbonize is there. It's coming up and down the chain, all directions. So when you talk about how organizations should be looking beyond that challenge of decarbonization to see the opportunities, making these changes to lower emissions, it can do a lot more for an organization. So talk a little bit about that.
At the end of the day, the emissions reduction is always going to be a driving force, as we've mentioned, and as we talk about a lot, Deborah, in all of our interactions. But there's several different ways to look at emission reductions and the problems and the opportunities, as you mentioned. So we can really maximize the investments that need to be made. So as you think about the different paths to achieve that target, right? At the end of the day, we're talking about likely a number. Is it a net zero? Is it a carbon reduction? Is it a sustainability initiative? At the end of the day, we can call it a number, a target that we're aiming for. There's a number of different paths to be able to hit that number. So some organizations look at things like a virtual power purchase agreement or a VPPA to really help address the majority of their scope 2 emissions, which is typically produced, the electricity consumption. And this is a wonderful thing, right? It is helping to clean up our grid. It's helping to get more renewables out there. It's a great initiative from a sustainability standpoint. And really compared to some of the other ways that you can pull the lever around sustainability, it's not overly complex. Now there's lawyers involved and there's contracts and all those other things that come with it. So I'm not saying it's easy to go get done, but in terms of how many pieces within an organization is impacted by it, it's more minimal than some other options. But it also, when you think about applying those dollars, it doesn't impact the other pieces of the organization as much. So comparing and contrasting that to looking at other scope 1 and 2 emission opportunities, things like energy efficiency or electrification of different systems, different pieces of equipment that would typically have used fossil fuels in the past, addressing some refrigerant issues, that really gives you a big opportunity to touch a lot of different pieces of your organization. So what do I mean by that? Right? As you go think about the systems that use energy, when you think about energy efficiency or some of these other electrification of heat pieces, there's a great opportunity and there's a great space where they touch a number of different ways that your facility is used. So if you think about things like lighting isn't just the ability to see what you're doing. It can have a big impact on how you interact with your space. And so, if we think about a hospital, they could go get energy efficiency while having a more purposefully designed lighting system that could improve patient safety or patient outcomes or enable the staff to be more efficient and effective. And that's an amazing outcome that can come from sustainability. You can also think about schools. They can have better air quality. It's a big challenge for a number of schools based on where they're located, that the quality of their air, as well as thinking about the comfort level of the classroom, helping students come to class and engage with the instructors in a way that helps enable their learning. But while you're also doing this, you can get some great sustainability, some cost savings that now you can take and invest in workforce development or in technology or in teacher training. So there's great ways that you can use the sustainability umbrella to make those things happen. And the same thing, in office buildings or factories, making them more comfortable, pleasing spaces to be in for tenants and employees. And all of this can be achieved while lowering your energy intensity and driving towards a more future forward solution for your business and organization.
And I want to underline a point that you're making here. When first we talked about the chain outside of an organization, the pressures being brought to bear. And then we're talking about internally within an organization, all the stakeholders, all the people and departments that need to talk to each other. And something that we hear a lot of is that so much of this is still siloed. And breaking down those silos is so important because you're looking at the value, the bigger picture across an organization. And that's embedded in everything that you just said. That's there, breaking down those silos and internal stakeholders talking to each other.
Yeah, Debra, you nailed it. When you think about sustainability in a silo, it can lose importance to an organization, right? Because all of these organizations, everything we're talking about, schools don't exist to hit sustainability targets. Neither do factories. Neither do any other organization or missions that the companies that we work for, the enterprises that we represent. And so the way that I like to think about sustainability is this amazing nexus to pull together and impact the mission of our organization. And so, as you're thinking about how can I hit this target, if we just think about that target in its own right, we can hit it, certainly. But we also have the opportunity to impact those around us. So if you think about something like the HR department, right? HR exists everywhere and they're wonderful people and they care very much about our employees from a number of different ways. They want to be able to retain the wonderful talent that we have. They want to be able to attract new and wonderful talent out in the market space. And when we have those folks that are aligned to the mission of our organization and believe in what we're trying to do and they have the right tools available to them and we're able to make the right investments in the space that they're working in, now they're even more productive because they're aligned to the mission. So it's a really cool opportunity to say, hey, HR, come sit alongside while we talk about sustainability and talk about our associates and our employees and how they feel about working here and how we attract them and how it meets our employee engagement scores and how we talk about what we do with our customers. That's a really cool story. And it's not just, hey, we reduced how much CO2 emissions that we have, or we reduced how much electricity we use. It's a bigger, broader story. Now you have to have that conversation for it to take place, which can add some complexity to it. But really at the end of the day, that we're all here to enable our organization's mission, and sustainability can be a great tool within that.
Good. I'm glad you brought that up because we are hearing that. We hear that within our own company, how sustainability in all aspects is becoming so important in hiring and retaining, and we're hearing it from the people in our community as well. So I'm glad we're able to underline that a little bit. And I want to move on to everybody's favorite topic, which is money, investment. There are incentives and funding out there for decarbonization, but how does that translate to other improvements? Can we draw a straight line here, even a wiggly line?
The simple answer is yes. And I'll leave a dramatic pause there as if that's where I'm going to stop. But really, that would be kind of boring. So let's talk about it because it is everybody's favorite topic. The ability to hit some of these ancillary benefits from sustainability is really enabled by a lot of these funding opportunities out there. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can think about this. So I touched on resilience at one point, right? And if you have a goal where you need to hit resilience for your organization, you can go and you can get a generator that burns fossil fuel. Absolutely. And you'll be more resilient. However, it's probably not the most sustainable option, or at least there's a way to put a side eye towards whether that's going to meet that goal. There's other ways where you can look at that and say, okay, how can I leverage some of these sustainability dollars out there, some of these fundings from tax incentives and utility rebates, et cetera. And now you can achieve that resilience goal while also thinking about the sustainability, and it becomes more economically feasible. And that's amazing. And that's what people get really excited about. So we talked about some of those silos. A big part of what we can do is say, all right, let's think about our sustainability target. Let's think about the goal that we have. Let's bring in the mission of our organization and understand how we can impact that. And let's also look at a lot of the different funding opportunities out there. And Debra, there are many, many funding opportunities. We won't be able to touch on all of them, but there's a lot of ways that it's now making things that might not have been possible achievable now. Another example of that would be within some different equipment and systems that you could buy. In the past, the most efficient solution that you could design wasn't necessarily optimal from a first cost perspective. So you could have capital constraints or your return on investment might not make sense even with the operational savings. Now with a lot of those fundings and incentives out there, that becomes at least neutral on a first cost perspective based on a traditional system, what you may have seen in the past, or the lowest first cost system that we'd seen in the past. It can even sometimes become more cost effective or less expensive than a traditional system. And that's really exciting because now not only are you getting first cost savings, but that operational savings is becoming incredibly impactful to your business. You're not spending as much money as you would have otherwise. And now you can use those dollars to either invest in more sustainability initiatives, invest in workforce initiatives, invest in your students or your patients or your staff, your employees, et cetera. And so it's a really, really great time to be thinking about pulling all of these pieces together. But you have to, I hesitate to say it because it's such a common saying, but you have to start with the end in mind. You have to think about where you're trying to go. So as you're pulling this together, it brings in more complexity, certainly, to think about these different components, but you can achieve such an amazing result that it's truly worth it.
It's another area where you need everyone in your company pulling together. You're going to need finance involved in this. You're going to need legal. You're going to need, in some cases, facilities and other areas. So it's another way to break down silos and get everybody's input to make sure that you're making the most of the investment dollars that are out there.
Totally. And if you're part of a large enterprise that's located in multiple different geographies, those funding mechanisms and the incentives that are available change. There's certainly the federal ones, but we see it at the state level. We see it at the city level. We also see it at the utility level, which could be different depending on where you are located in a city. And so it's a big piece to make sure that you're taking into account all of those dollars out there because it really can enable your mission. On the backside of that, Debra, you talked about getting finance involved. There's a lot of these really exciting structured financing mechanisms, some really innovative solutions that are newer based on the sustainability goals and targets that we have in front of us as a society, and some that have been around for quite a long time. You know, things like tax-exempt leasing programs, property assessed clean energy loans, energy savings performance contracting, energy as a service, energy service agreements, power purchase agreements, and all the other 3 to 4 letter acronyms that run around out there that we'd like to speak in. These mechanisms really take the remaining funding required for a project and allow flexibility in how you fit that into your organizational goals. So again, you can look at, how does it fit from a CapEx perspective? Can it be an operational expense? Can it be a combination of the two? What makes the most sense for what your organization goals are? And now you've got that flexibility to find the different ways to do it.
All right. So we've solved all this. You make it, an organization can really have it all. They can do this all. By nature, I'm a little skeptical, but is it true? Can this really happen?
Yeah, it's totally possible. Debra, I appreciate your skepticism because really, I do look at this and say, if we step back, we can achieve so much with what we have in front of us. When I'm as excited about something and others that I speak to are as excited about something as we all are, you have to look at that from a skeptical standpoint. But really, there's so many opportunities to make this moment in time mean more than just emissions reduction. We can impact the lives of people around us. We can look at workforce development and we can give someone a new career. We can think about how people come to work and how they feel about the work that they do. We can educate students. We can help people heal. I mean, there's an amazing way that we can use our buildings to do a whole lot more and be very friendly to our environment and think about the sustainability initiatives in front of us. So, really modernizing our facilities while enhancing schools and hospitals and government buildings and businesses and so on, it's totally possible. Certainly every situation is a little unique, but I truly believe that when you combine the resources at hand and the right expertise, we can have more than we ever thought we could.
All right, I'm a little less skeptical and a little more inspired. It's so interesting how it touches on so many areas. You're starting with emissions, but you really can affect the big picture. And I think that is inspiring. So, Becky, thank you so much for joining us again today. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank the team at Trane for making this episode possible for us. And I hope everybody thinks a lot about what Becky had to say and how you can take some of these lessons and bring them to your organization and start knocking on those doors in other departments and getting other people inspired as well. So thanks again, Becky, for being here. And finally, let me thank our listeners for engaging with our content and being part of our Smart Energy Decisions community. And if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Tell your colleagues and peers about it. And to learn about how you can become part of our next event, visit our website, smartenergydecisions.com. We're always excited about sharing these conversations with leaders of the energy transition as part of this podcast on our website and at our events. And it's all in the interest of helping you make those smart energy decisions.
Thanks for listening to Smart Energy Voices, an SED podcast. Digest the insights from today's episode and take action on the ideas that have inspired you. Join us every Friday for conversations with smart energy leaders. To keep up to date with trends and happenings in the energy transition, visit smartenergydecisions.com to register for our daily newsletter and become part of the Smart Energy Decisions community.